to make a child, B sub C. And at this point, I wasn't even thinking that there was in my mind, I threw off the married, this is reactant 1, reactant B, and I didn't even care about the married couple. I just knew in my mind that A and B would produce a child. And I wanted to understand how you could explain this in terms of thermodynamics. Because thermodynamics predicts whether we have a reaction or not. So at this point, I started to write this book in 3 volumes, volume 1, volume 2, and volume 3. This was, volume 1 turned out to be an explanation of existence in 21 chapters. But at this point, these were all just draft chapters that I made. And this was 2001. And then maybe I'll record this and say you put.
I've already recorded it.
Oh,
started recording.
What time did it start?
Just after you started explaining that. Since what time you have actually?
Oh, okay.
Yeah, just after that.
Yeah. So the reason. So here to summarize, we're trying to explain why this book has been so difficult to write. So originally it just started as chemical engineering student. I wanted to understand how you explain Gibbs free energy as the determining factor that determines if there's not a decrease in Gibbs free energy, there's no spontaneity of the reaction. There's no basically love between the couple, or there's no motivation between the two to react. So I was working on this equation: male plus female produces child. But the problem was when I wrote these, I realized that, for example, when I'm using this reaction symbols here, it's implicit in my mind that everybody else in the world already understands that this is obvious, that we can explain the human reactions using these symbols. For example, when you say A plus B goes to BD, you probably think this is something simple, right? It's trivial, that everybody understands. But when you start interacting with other people, you find that this is not, for a chemist, this is natural language. But for an average person in the sociology department or philosophy or economics, they will laugh at you. They say, this is, nobody's ever written a book on human chemistry. So first there has to be an established book on human chemistry in the same way that chemistry was invented before thermodynamics was invented. So someone has to write a book on human chemistry before you can even begin talking about human thermodynamics. So I got to the point where 2004 right here, a friend of mine, her mother got killed her mother and her got killed over an insurance scam. She had, I think her mother and her grandmother had a boyfriend that came in, and they wanted to get the insurance money out of her, and so they killed her and her mother. And she was only 19 years old, and she became pretty much orphaned, and she had 2 or 3 brothers to watch after. So during this time, I was working on what happens to a person when they die. Where does the soul go, as the Christians would say, or where does your mind go? So I was working on that, trying to understand the conservation of Libb Thims. Because I was raised Lutheran myself. I went to church. I went to baptized and everything. But when my mother died when I was 12, I pretty much stopped going to church because she was the one that was making me go to church. And then when I got into engineering, then I had a new belief system. I understood that you can understand the world differently. So in this time, in my mind, I was working on how you could explain, say, the conservation of the person in terms of the first law of thermodynamics, conservation of energy. So I wrote this book kind of for her to explain what I call cessation thermodynamics. And I printed 100 copies and had 100 people read this, and they gave me feedback. So then, in 2005, I started the Journal of Human Thermodynamics. And that was started because I started the Institute of Human Thermodynamics in between here, somewhere in here. And one of the articles I was writing was, I wanted to understand, because I found out in about 2003 that if this entity has a free energy initial free energy sub I, the female has free energy sub J, the baby has a free energy sub K. There's also has to be the free energy and measurable in the married couple, the husband and the wife were bonded here. So there's 4 different variables of free energy here. And so originally I was leaving out this whole understanding. So then I realized that nobody, as far as I was aware of, had never developed a theory of human chemical bonding the way we have of the way Linus Pauling developed the theory of chemical bonding in terms of sharing of electrons and the energy that's stored in the bond energy. So then I started writing an article on the human chemical bond online. It just anchored off of the website humanthermodynamics.com, and I found out that I'll show you a quick one what that looks like here. I couldn't fit the article on one web page because I realized the subject matter was going to grow into a book length book. It was such a large subject. So the amount of energy in here, this theory had never been developed before.
The triple bond there is highly vulnerable to attack.
So here's the 2005 on the nature of the human chemical bond.
It's only a single bond that is everlasting. Double bond is vulnerable to attack, but the triple bond is highly vulnerable to attack.
I don't understand there.
It can break down.
Can't break down. It's very stable.
The three acetylene.
It's, triple bond is strong.
No, he's saying that triple bond is weak.
Weak?
Yeah, the more the number of bonds, the weaker it is. The less number of the lesser number of
Triple
bonds.
bond only in certain cases.
No, the nitrogen.
lasting effect.
Acetylene is a weak compound. It is vulnerable to attack. Nitrogen triple bond, yes. Nitrogen triple bond is
The triple bond in nitrogen is one of the strongest bonds there is. It was very difficult to break that bond. They had to invent the Haber process to break nitrogen from the air to get it out of the, so that the industrial revolution started. Well, let's go, let me just show you this one here. So anyways, this article here, this is kind of where this is where the Journal of Human Thermodynamics started, and where the books on human chemistry started. So originally I started the Journal of Human Thermodynamics, and this was launched in 2005, and so I first started writing on the human chemical bond, and you see here, it started with this article, and the article was left unfinished, and I realized after I was working on the human chemical bond theory, and I also had discovered Goethe in 2006, that those two things compelled me to write, I ended up having to write the first textbook on human chemistry. So that's where that came from. But you can see some of the I found Yahoo answers online, such as there is no such thing as a human chemical bond between people. So when you talk about the A plus B goes to AB, and you say this is dimer, you say that simply, but people don't understand this. This is an average, this publication online that says there's no such thing as human chemical bond. Or people would say to you, there's no such thing as a dimer bond between people. That's just something silly or childlike nonsense or something, you understand? So then you say I worked on, so at this point here, male plus female forms the child. I wasn't understanding that, but once I got to this point, there has to be some kind of theory that explains all this. So I developed one of the first working models of the human chemical bond, and in terms of Gibbs free energy, but it resulted in, let's see here. So getting back, so this was 2002, the first book here. Then I launched the journal, and that launched, we published 30 papers by about 20 different people, something like that. And that was a learning experience for me. I saw people were coming to me with all sorts of different subjects they wanted to publish on. There was language disagreement. So
how many papers are there in this thermodynamics journal?
I'll show you.
Quite a few.
I'll show you.
Is that a regular journal?
So it exists until today?
It still exists, but I got to the point at about 2000, after 10 years, that the amount of work I had to do, I couldn't do. I would need 3 or 4 or 5 different assistants to keep the thing going. I would need someone to vet the articles, because the amount of time it takes someone to send me an article, to get the whole thing peer reviewed, to publish it online. I was only one person, and then there was no funding. I mean, I still have to pay bills like everybody else. So I was just doing this all on my free time. So I just realized that I would have to get a university department, have a whole students and helping to get so I had the thing froze up. But if you look on here, you can see.
With a paper like the one that I submitted to you and you circulated.
So look, just go to the top here, you click on JAT, and it takes you to the home page, and then you can see the whole history of the whole thing. So we started publishing in 2005. Then I took a 2-year break here when I wrote my human chemistry book. Then the journal was active again. And then, so you can see, so 2000, these are all the articles we published here. 2006. So we had different articles published. So Georgy Gladyshev published, the Russian physical chemist. And then we had 2006 things started getting stalled out because I had to write. So then different people started writing. So this is where I first started getting into life does not exist, or abioism viewpoint, because there was conflict between all of us arguing about what constituted thermodynamic definition of life. And so understanding social systems of free energy perspective is Jing Jin. Physics, so then you can see. Social equation of state. This is kind of like a ideal gas equation model of humans. So then this is where it started getting stalled out. The thing was growing too big that I couldn't do it on my own. I mean, it's still there, but we haven't published anything.
So just out of curiosity, what do you think, where do the souls go? Or for that matter, are there any souls?
Are there more people than yourself contributing to this journal?
One man
Or you are
army.
the only writer?
One man army.
The journal?
This journal.
I just showed you the journal. We published.
Quite a few persons are contributing to it.
Here, I'll show you here. This is. Okay. So from introduction here, from 2005 to 2015, I launched the online journal Human Thermodynamics in an effort to bring public light to this underground subject, which reviewed and published a total of 34 articles by 23 authors, during the course of which much was learned in respect to the level of the state of extant established higher level knowledge on said subject. So that's it. 34 articles by 23 authors. Those are the ones I just showed you on when we scrolled. But so some of these are all draft books here. So these were never finished. They made it to the draft stage. They were never published. All these books here.
Mm-hmm.
So this one was published. You have a copy of that. So this established the subject of human chemistry as a science. So when people say you can't write A plus B goes to AB because it's not a science, you can say no, it is a science. Libb Thims published the whole textbook on it. And so then this is human molecule, about the chemical view of the molecular, the history of, this one is a history of the subject of everyone has ever thought of a person as a molecule. There's about 100 different people throughout history who had this philosophy. So you can read, that's a history book for the young people that you can read in high school. So then Encyclopedia of Thermodynamics was started in 2008. So right in here I was an author for Wikipedia when it launched. So I wrote about 150 articles for Wikipedia.
Oh wow.
And I started writing, but then when I started writing articles on human thermodynamics, human molecule, and human chemistry, that's when I started getting attacked. They said you can't have this in Wikipedia because it's not. Even though I would cite, I would say, well, human chemistry has been written by Henry William Fairbairn. He wrote a book in 1917. They said, they would still use rules and red tape to kind of push the subject out. And they would, how Wikipedia works is if there's something that they don't like, you can phone your friend, or email your friend, and they can come and vote for you, vote against you. So if you have enough friends, they'll come and they'll put a vote on an article for deletion, and you can say, hey, I remember I did you that favor last week with when I helped you vote on your article, so you come over and vote on my article, and if you get a lot of, that's how it works behind the scene. You kind of like, it's like a bureau, like the government kind of. So I left that after 2010. I just left and I started my own Wikipedia because I don't. These are just kind of footnotes for people to read about people like Mirza Big, or you know. So these are the other books. These books were never published. So this book I tried to write, What Happens When You Die for Dummies. But this still, it was a confusing subject in my mind because I still believe in the concept of life and that and then I tried to write a book on purpose. But purpose is another term you can't, that's an anthropomorphic term. So you can, if you say that hydrogen and oxygen react together to form water because that's their purpose, people are going to laugh at you. So that's you have to de-anthropomorphize your thinking. So now instead of saying that the purpose, you can say, well, that you can speak in terms of potentials. Like a lot of your students, when your students you have the potential to realize this future. And those are scientifically neutral terms that you can speak in the chemistry classroom. You can speak, and this one here, this was published online. There was an illustrated version of Goethe's Electrophinities that was published in, I think, 1880s. So I put the whole thing for people to read online, and I decoded a lot of, because the way Goethe wrote this whole thing, he told somebody that this is layered in terms of 3 layers of coded secrecy. So that if there's all kinds, even the characters, A, B, and C, D are written such that they're coded together to explain things from Greek mythology, and there's layers of puzzles in there. So I wrote this book to start explaining some of the puzzles. And then this one here, Human Chemical Thermodynamics with Applications in the Humanities. I started this in 2013, but it stalled out at the 100-page level. And then
Extreme atheism.
this one here was a little bit my involvement with Mirza Big in 2014. Before I met Mirza, I was what you call an implicit atheist. That means I just kind of keep my mouth shut about it, and I don't talk about it. I would just, that's how most American scientists are. If you talk to them about what do you believe in God, they'll say, that I don't want to talk about that subject, because people kind of keep their mouth shut. But after interaction with Big, I realized that Mirza is kind of like my brother, is the way I understand this. And you're being raised in Indian Pakistani culture. It's kind of, there's not a lot of freedom for you to look and investigate alternative points of view. So for example, when you told me that you believe in the Buraq, the horse that Muhammad rode on his night journey, that just really struck me as something that, if that's something that's stuck in your mind, that's very, it doesn't, the laws of a flying horse don't hold up in terms of physics and chemistry, but you can be so intelligent on one hand about the physical chemistry, but then still have this belief that I knew I had to, someone needs to speak about this openly. So then I changed from implicit atheism
Explicit.
kind of to explicit. So now I speak openly about it, and I don't, I think it's my,
That's your right, and we are
Yeah,
actually
yeah.
okay with that.
and I tried to draft this book, it's explaining this, there was a statement by someone that said someday morality would be explained in physical-chemical terms. So you see the symbol of the three, there's the Christian symbol,
Get it?
this is the Hindu symbol. But anyways, these books never stalled out, they only made it to the draft stage. But I did publish this one in 10 volumes. So you have that was in 2000. And I published this one in a hard copy set, just in case the whole internet crashed and everything got erased. Then I'd have a hard copy to go back on. And then that's where we are right here. I tried to write these books to explain kind of the stories where did the story of Moses come from? Where did Abraham come from? Was Abraham real or not? And so there's lots of background to that. And explain, instead of explaining Christians, when I was a child, I was taught, well, there was Noah's flood and humans were created 5,000 years ago. So it's called the flood mythology, flood cosmology. And
It has a proper name actually. Well, I'll tell you. There's a name
instead
to
of,
it in English.
so I brought 6 children in, I taught them the modern view. Instead of saying we came from the flood of Noah, now I explain that we come from the Big Bang. And that's the starting point. And I say now we believe in the laws of thermodynamics. And I use that as the point, and I also explain a little bit where some of the religions come from. So, but these stalled out. So that's what I was trying to say. If you said I can't really, most energy I can expend is to come out here and do the interview. That way we can have the whole thing documented. But then after I get this published, then I can come back and study the video and you know what I'm saying. So that's why I can't.
The type of publication will also change, right? It will be only on videos then.
Only on what?
Paper will be gone.
The what?
Publication on paper in journals like those, that would
Be gone?
that will become expensive,
No.
and it will be online only.
No. Publication in book is very cheap. You can, if you want to publish your book, go to lulu.com, and you can publish the book for free, and I can buy it for $22 and have it shipped to me in America.
Isn't it expensive?
No, nothing.
Very expensive?
You don't have to pay anything. This encyclopedia I had to publish a little bit. Or no, it didn't really cost, but to buy the whole 10-volume set, to make a copy like this costs $32. So if you want to buy a 10-volume, you have to spend $350 American money, which comes out to
$50.
300.
Nobody is going to buy it.
$350 is $56,000 rupees. 56.
ये publication ये हुआ है. This is a cost of publication.
Yeah, cost. But if you want to make second edition of a book, you can publish it at lulu.com, and you can. It doesn't cost you anything, but people can buy it from you now. That way, right now in America, your book's not available. If I go to Amazon.com in America, there's no copies available. So that's why it's difficult for people to read your book right now.
What is this online publication like?
You just have to write the book. If you write it, he can make it into a PDF file. Then once you have PDF file, you upload it to the website, and you follow a couple steps. It takes like a couple days or whatever, and then you can publish it. And yeah, you buy an ISBN number. You have to pay for that. I think maybe it costs like not very much.
He already has a publication house, he already has a ISBN number and everything associated with it.
Yeah, but if there's no copies available in America, how is that going to help?
We'll try to actually circumvent that situation.
Yeah, because if you have an old-fashioned publishing house, and there's not, people should be able to buy it, because like My Human Chemistry, people buy it all over the world. It's available in every country. But your books aren't available in America, so you need to find a modern publishing house.
We might update our own.
This Amazon and everybody else, they are expensive people.
But they are expensive because they are selling. We can actually approach anyone who's not that commercially, that publication house which is commercially viable to us, we'll approach it.
Coming back to assimilation, right?
Yeah, back to simulation. So, let's see, let me check the time. So it's 5:30, we're doing pretty good. So now, we've talked about, so we stepped through, let me check through, make sure it's still on.
Where were you? How did you come?
You want a cold one?
Yeah, if you have cold one, yeah, this one's empty. Okay, Mirza, where's your pointer? Now we're gonna get back to business.
Okay.
So right now, we've talked about how Mirza's,
Hold on.
I checked it already, it's good. I checked it. So now we've summarized how Goethe was the first person who developed human chemical reaction theory in terms of the AB plus B, A plus B going to the forming the AB dimer, as Big calls it. So now Big right here says the process of socialization thus comprises a series of complicated equilibria involving past experiences and present realities. So in your mind, these types of equations they're coupled to each other. So you have some here like this, some here like this, and the people go through equilibrium reactions in society through their existence.
Interaction, when I say interaction, or the socialization process, is those graphs.
Yeah, and
that is in my mind.
and how many of those?
Meta stable states, then the stable state, another meta stable. If there is no bond formation, in that case it goes down, and the societies remain as segregated. But finally, if there is a common front, there may be an activated conflict. But in each case, a certain degree of freedom will have to be lost.
Okay.
We'll talk about that
Coming up
using
here.
of the degree of
So
freedom.
one question, how many of the reaction coordinate graphs do you envision a person goes through in their total
Yeah, it
existence?
depends on the constraints.
Huh?
What type of constraints are going to be there?
Talking about the reaction,
The social constraint, the environmental constraint.
is this the constant you're talking about here? The equilibrium constant?
That is equilibrium one.
So you're saying a person
In
goes
that
through?
case, it is reversing.
Mhm.
In this case, in the second case, it may form, but again it may reverse.
Mhm.
A stable equilibrium will only be formed when this is not reversible.
Yeah.